You know what time it is. It is the best hour of your week. Hit the horn. It is time for tipping points and puzzle pieces. It is 71 degrees outside. It may look like it's 90, but I actually just got done doing something. So I'm a little glistening. All right. So it's a beautiful day out, but it is the best time. And I have no idea what we're in for today, but I do know that Mark attended a seminar the other day. So I'm hoping to hear a little bit about that. So without any further ado, let me bring in my partner in crime, my partner in change, the evolution, the revolution, Mark Boatwright Frost. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a very weird day.
And it's only 1 o'clock, right?
And it's only 1 o'clock, and I got more to do. Yeah, I have been struggling with trying to get things up and running on technology today, and I have come to the conclusion, and this will go right into the program, that we have not gotten better about technology.
Mhm.
We have more shit than we ever had before, but the people who are running this stuff don't really understand how it works.
Are you talking about me?
No, well, not specifically, but I was on Patreon today. We've been having trouble with our Patreon site, and somebody signed up on Saturday, and nothing doesn't show up. Doesn't money doesn't come through. Nothing happened. Site looks fine when I go on it, and then I find out that Stripe isn't set up the way it needs to be set up, and something changed, and Stripe won't let me set up, so I ended up switching over to PayPal, and it's just like an hour and a half later, that's all I did,
Oh, I
and it's not
understand your
like I don't have other things, huh?
the D2 website is down and we're having hell trying to get it back up.
Oh, geez.
And it's been down for like 2 weeks, at least.
Oh, well,
I feel your pain.
yeah, and it's like coming from the tech industry, I will tell you that there's a term called spaghetti code. And this
Hmm.
is really what it means when you unbury all of the spaghetti, and this is what the base of it means. Somebody wrote something really cool that worked, and then they left it to the corporation to run, and they went off and did something else. And a whole bunch of other people started putting stuff on it when they didn't really understand how it worked to start with, because they're not good enough to actually have written it. And then after a while, you've got this spaghetti everywhere, all from the same, pouring over the plate, pouring over the table, pouring over the floor, and it doesn't work anymore, and nobody knows how to fix it.
Wow. That's a
and
pretty good analogy.
and that's where I think everything is. I think that a whole bunch of stuff has been invented. I don't think the people that invented it, that had the understanding of it, are around it much anymore, and I think a whole bunch of people have their hands in it that don't have any idea how it works.
Well, I know that happens when there are were programs that are created and then they become legacy programs and they're no longer going to be updated, but a lot of folks still use them for various reasons, like they can't afford to go to the next iteration, they don't want to go to the next iteration, or whatever the case may be.
Or Microsoft for a long time, their next iteration was usually crap. It's every other one. Every other operating system was garbage. That does not seem to be, in all fairness to Microsoft, that does not seem to be the case anymore. Though I am hesitating to go to 11 until I have enough people telling me that it's good and solid.
What are they on now? Because I'm
They're
a
on
Mac user
11.
now. They're on
Yeah,
11.
11. Yeah, they're on 11. I'm still on 10. I'm not really in a big hurry to move to 11, because the minute you move, you find out there's all this legacy stuff you got to deal with. Anyway, the topic of today's subject is why we can do the same workshop on perspective 1,000 times and never cover the same subject twice.
Hmm.
So this topic is all about perspective. And when you think about it, perspective is everything. And it's in everything. It's about how we look at things. And the point is that if you get new information, you're supposed to change your perspective. How many people do you know that actually are able to change their perspective?
Seems like folks are pretty dug in right now.
Yeah,
Uh, I've had some very interesting conversations. I've been a part of some very interesting meetings
I bet you have.
where folks' hearts are pretty hardened and they seem pretty incapable on seeing the other side. And I think there's a fear that if they acknowledge the other side, then they're going to lose their position in their own interest, which just isn't true. But people are so used to fighting, and it wasn't always this way. I don't believe this. But people are so used to fighting for their own position that if they acknowledge anything on the other side as being right or I agree with that, then it's used as a gotcha, right? Well, if that's right, then everything else must be right. It's a fallacy, right? Or you agree, but I still disagree with your stuff. And it's just not a good way to operate, right? Because then you become a dishonest agent if you're not able to say, hey, you know what, this is what I believe. I don't believe what you're saying here, but out of what you're saying, A, C, H, L, Q, Z, those things I agree with. You should at least be able to acknowledge that and stand in the truth of that, right?
Yep. But we've gotten so combative. So here's a piece of perspective. If we continue to be in our points of in our fortresses of combat and holding on to our viewpoints, we can never come together and fix things.
True.
Congratulations, it's going to stay broken. Hey, Justin.
Sadly, I think some people want it to stay broken, and they are brokers on working on a broken system, right? They profit off of it.
Yeah. But I will. My perspective, my understanding is that they don't see the long-term consequences. They're fighting for their short-term gain. They're looking just down the road to their current paycheck and not further to the consequences to the mankind, because mankind is so big there are no consequences, right? We can't possibly cause climate change. Oh wait, that's new information and our perspectives need to change, right?
Well, I think for a lot of folks, and even me in my younger years, is what do I care, right? I'm not going to be here, so it doesn't really matter. And in regards to my kids, you know, if I have any at that time, right, they'll deal with it, and it is what it is.
Yeah, my family was, it's good enough for us, it's good enough for you, and it's better for you than it ever was for us. Yeah, but then again, if there was homeless back then, nobody acknowledged it.
But there was.
It was.
That's not a new phenomenon.
No, but it didn't really pop up until the 80s, above the visible line.
Mm.
And that's also when we got, in my understanding, my opinion, that's also when we got the not perspective, when we got the messaging that it was all about people who were drug addicts and crazy. The reason it popped up in the 80s is that Reagan and the Republican Congress closed the publicly funded mental hospitals and let everybody out.
That was in the 80s?
Yep.
Really?
Yep. So I remember being in Berkeley. I lived there for several years, and I was on Telegraph Avenue at this great little place called the Soup Kitchen, and the food was phenomenal, and it was just really good place to go eat. And I was sitting there with I think my girlfriend at the time, and a woman came in and grabbed the pancakes off of Christine's plate, and just like said, "These are mine," and turned around and walked out. I mean, that was like my first real awareness of that kind of in your face kind of
Wow.
what at that time I would term as crazy.
You know, it'd be cool if you did a history channel and you just went and took a little topic like, hey, during the 80s, Reagan did this, and just talk about that and just provide some documentation. I think that would be fascinating. I would listen to that podcast all day long.
Yeah, I might just do that. But this last book the last little booklet I put out, kind of spurred me on to go back and finish my book, which is going to talk about perspective.
Okay.
I have been sitting on about 260 pages of book that I started writing about 3 years ago. And I stopped writing it because my perspective kept changing and my information kept updating and my experiences kept growing as we move forward in this project. And it went from, one, I don't even remember what the original title of it is, but the working title for the last couple of years has been Two Steps Back, about gaining perspective. And now the title of the book is Getting Our Shit Together,
Mm.
A Path to a Human Future.
I smile because I agree with you. Once upon a time, I tried to do an autobiography, and I lost the book twice, and then it's so hard to start over. And then things change. Your life is different. You see things differently, and yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. I was smiling when you said that.
Well, it's about perspective,
Perspective.
isn't it?
It really is.
So I actually am rewriting. I'm starting the book over. Like I never wrote 266 pages, which I got to tell you is really hard on the ego. Really hard on the. I did all this work, yeah, but it was verbose. It didn't get to the point. It was talking about partially understood stuff because I knew it needed to be said, but I didn't know how to say it. And now I'm just like flying through pages of this book because it's easy to say because of the work we've been doing.
Well, Mark, let me ask you if you can, please put what you've already written aside because it's like a time capsule of who you were. It's like talking about you celebrating your birthday and you wanted your friends to just reflect on who you are, who you were, right? I think that's awesome to be. I wish I had some documentation and go back and look and see how I saw the world then, right? And just how it's changed or how it stayed the same.
Yeah, and it's digitally saved. Um,
Yeah, don't write over it.
no, 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 no. I started something completely new, and I had it outlined in 20 minutes.
Wow.
And now I finished writing the introduction. I'm into part one of it. I will be done with it this year. It will be published this year.
Okay.
So I am looking forward to having that as kind of the um, outreach, for lack of a better word, talking about what resilient communities are, how to get them. Of course, like I teach the workshops, um, I go through how we got here. Let's talk about perspective. Let's talk about how we got here. Let's talk about the history stuff that you want me to do podcasts on, and just do understanding that. Then we start talking about, okay, now what is humanity? What is it to be human? Let's
Mm.
understand that piece. That's part two. And yes, it has a soundtrack because that seems to be my thing now. But I think music is one of the best forms of communication there is. And I'm very sad that the music industry has seen fit to so pigeonhole everything that nobody wants to write anything even remotely controversial or speaking to the truth of the world anymore. They all just want to, get sold to sell their stuff because that's our focus, right? We
Do you
all
think that's
sell
true?
things.
I don't know. I push back on that.
Okay.
It could be more that, and I know artists can now release music on their own, but I
Yeah.
think that there's more of it where music is really fed to us, right?
Yeah.
I I'm going to be doing a podcast soon on the state of hip hop and rap and who controls and influences the style, right? We have our conscious rap like Public Enemy and KRS-One and Common, and we're in the drill rap era, which is very deadly and dangerous. And why is that allowed to feather through to the top and rise like cream? But things where people are speaking positively isn't consumed. It's not promoted, right? And I think there's some of that element in there.
This just occurred to me, and again, we're talking about perspective, so I'm going to put this in terms of perspective. I was talking to Terry yesterday about Dee Schneider of Twisted Sister. Wow, of Twisted Sister, because I was listening to "We're Not Going to Take It Anymore" song, and I don't even know if you know who they are. Um,
Is
but
Pat Benatar the lead singer?
no,
Oh,
Dee Snyder is. And back in the days of Tipper Gore and Al Gore and the whole music is the devil creating the evil in children and promoting violence and all of that. And Dee Snyder went in and basically uh, talked to Congress and just laid it out, saying, "No, it's not." As a matter of fact, our songs don't say any of those things, but there are songs that do.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is to have it as a media to communicate and discuss and everything else. But I think since then, which is my point, it has actually gone more that way because of the corporate influences about what sell and the shock value of selling it. On the other
Mm-hmm.
hand, YouTube has blown up with independent artists. Um, though I will tell you through my experience with it, most of them are copying other people's music, and or not copying, but covering other people's music as opposed to coming up with anything original. There are some people like Mary Spender that do, and I love Mary Spender. I love listening to her shows. I like her music, but it's not something I'm going to sit and listen to all day. So I'm looking for artists that make me feel like Crosby, Stills, and Nash did, like Creedence Clearwater did. I'm not looking for copies of them. I'm looking for people that write songs that resonate with me, that speak about our lives in a positive way, like the classic rock era. A lot of the classic rock era did.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? And again, from I'm making an assumption on on my perspective on this. I think another reason is we're in a microwave society, right? It would take forever for an album to come out, and artists would rewrite and rewrite and rewrite the lyrics until the song was perfect to them before they released it. And now, you've got all this AI that can create. Thank you so much. That can create this stuff, and I've got a beat, I've got the hook, I can AI can even write the lyrics for me and rhyme the words, so I can crank out songs like that. And does it really have that? It doesn't have that same feeling in the gut, or that stirs you or moves you to tears, or triggers memories or things like that. I think some of that's eroding. Would you agree with that?
Or yeah, and or that it calls to action, or points out the things that I mean. One of the songs that resonate with me from my past is Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Ohio. Have you ever heard that song, or do you remember it?
So I don't know artists and I don't know names of songs, but if you play the song, I know the song.
Okay, it was about the Kent State shooting back in the 60s, 70s, the 60s, I think, where National Guard shot students at Kent State during a protest. And "Four Dead in Ohio" is one of the lyrics of the song.
I wasn't even alive back then, so yeah. If I
So
heard the song, maybe I would know it. I didn't even know about the Kent shooting in Ohio.
Kent State shootings. It was there were a lot of over the top responses to the protests of the 60s. And Kent
Mm.
State was one of them, where several students got shot. And it's like their shooting live ammunition was screamed out by in the videos of it. It was a very powerful time, and we've forgotten about that. And things that are happening, injustices that are happening today, are screamed about in protests, but nobody's writing songs about them that get airplay, that get into people's consciousness. So that's something I would love to find, and I think that songs and music can change people's perspective without them feeling like they're giving up something.
Hmm.
It's a way that people can embrace new concepts and new ideas.
Well, how do we go back to that?
Yeah, I've been
Can
thinking
we?
about that. I mean, huh?
Can we?
I don't know. Not with our current corporate structure and limitations. Billy Joel, you know who Billy Joel is?
Yes, I do know who
Okay,
Billy Joel
Billy
is.
Joel is. Billy Joel did I bought a CD pack from Europe that included of Billy Joel's music, that included a CD about him just talking to students and noodling on the piano at Princeton University.
Mm.
And one of the things he said stuck out to me. There's a lot of things he said, like the Beatles could not get a recording contract today. And this CD was released in the 90s.
Wow.
The Beatles could not get a recording contract today, the way the industry is set up. I mean, just think about that. That kind of blows your mind.
Well, that just goes to my point, right? Of the state of hip hop or rap
Yeah.
today, right?
Yeah. He said that, back in the day when he got his start, people could throw stuff against the wall and try it, and everything would get played, and people could hear a wide range of music. There weren't stations that were just rock and roll. There weren't stations that were just country. People played a little bit of everything, and I remember those days. I remember listening to the radio and hearing, 38 Special, which is kind of a country crossover. Alabama 38 Special, Leonard Skinner were on the same stations that I heard Metallica, not Metallica back then, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and a whole range of music. Everybody played everything. I mean, Captain Tennille who played with would be followed up by Black Sabbath. It was kind of a cool. Everything was there, and there was no pigeonholes. So you had to. And when you think about it, this is how we get separated into our own places. We get pigeonholed and pigeonholed and pigeonholed until we have to identify with what's in our silo or we're not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, we got to knock down those silo walls and embrace everything.
Hard to do.
Well, that's why, we're doing it, isn't it? Because we do the hard work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, it is hard to do, but it's taken thousands of years to get us into this place, and we have less than 100 to get out of it.
Well, again,
How's
I
that for
will.
some perspective?
Well, I mean, I get it, but like a lot of folks, I'm not going to be here. So,
Yeah, but Layla is.
yeah. Oh, I said like a lot of people, not like me.
Yeah. And curious, and the intro to the book. Matter of fact, I'll read it. I kind of, well, you know me. I kind of sometimes put it just exactly like it is. Okay, so to start, you need to understand that there is no, and there are bullet points, one right way, no silver bullet, no solution that does not involve you doing the work. Are we clear on that? Good, because we need to get to the point where we can move forward together. All of us part of the are part of the solutions, and all of us need to work together, or none of our children will have a future. How's that for family values?
Mm, yeah.
You want to talk about family values? Let's call that one out. We need to work together and get out of our silos and come together, or our children don't have a future.
Well, let me ask you this. What about, because everyone doesn't have children.
Right.
So, hey, I don't have any kids, right? So what is the appeal to me?
Living better yourself in a shorter amount of time, because the process improves for everybody.
Right, but if I don't have any children and I'm not concerned about the future, shouldn't I YOLO?
Yeah, you could. And a lot of people are going to. That's why the tipping points piece is in place. Remember the title of our show,
Mm-hmm.
Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces? We're all puzzle pieces, but some of us won't ever get to the board. But the ones who do will determine what the future is. Here's an argument for your YOLO folks. You want to have a say in what goes on? Get your butt to the table.
Mm. All right, now we're cooking with peanut oil.
There we go. Some Asian food here. And I'll have an order of pad thai. Thank you.
I just, there has to be a way to appeal to everyone on
Well,
some level, right?
there is, and a lot of it's going to be person to person. It's why we do the neighborhood thing.
Mm-hmm.
We work together to teach people that there is a better way. And yeah, we are actually the ambassadors that are going to teach people to do this, but we teach people by leading them into it through value propositions that are important to them. So before we can help change other people's perspectives, guess what? We have to change our own.
Well, those are facts there for sure.
Yeah. We have to learn how to take in new information and change our own perspective with it. It's true, Terry. Terry just chimed in saying, not everyone is ever on board in the beginning. And, science has said that it will take somewhere between 15 and 25% of the people coming on board to move it forward. And here's two facts, and I say this a lot: if you never start, you're never going to get there, and a lot of people will never start.
Mm-hmm.
And a passive choice is still a choice. You're just abdicating any say in the consequences, which is what I just said about people who choose not to come to the table. If you're not at the table, you're not going to have a say.
Well, and I wonder if we can, look at how we do the approach and see if we can diversify the way that we cast the net to try to bring people in, right? This is just me thinking now, like, all right, we're having this discussion, right? I got my thinking cap on. All right, so what can I do to speak to just what I said, right? If a lot of our message resonates with folks that have children or grandchildren. Well, what about the folks that don't have grandchildren? Well, I need to live in that for a little bit and think about what that appeal would be.
Yep. And a lot of it is listening to people, and you have to adjust in the moment. You have to listen to people about where they are and adjust to what, find out, and ask questions like you ask of me. What's important to you? I mean, what will get you motivated to do this? And just flat out ask them.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than trying to guess at it. What is going to make this work is connection with people, taking the time to learn who they are and asking them what is going to get you motivated to change the future. Because where we are now is pretty universally ugly.
Well, and then once you have that understanding of what's important to them, making that connection on how, whether it's, global warming, climate change, or whatever you want to call it, will be impacted by their input in a
Yes.
positive way.
Well, all of it, from small stuff to big stuff, all of it is going to take impact. And the thing is to capture what people say through a process of prioritization within your local group, and bringing those up to talk to a larger group and including those in that, and going through the same process again and marrying it until you have a set of priorities that you can bring a grassroots network together to start changing. But all that stuff doesn't need to be changed as much as like growing a garden in your own neighborhood. That's a starting point for creating those kind of connections and relationships.
Guess what I have coming in a couple days?
What do you have coming in a couple days?
A 7 foot high, 10 foot wide, 16 foot long greenhouse.
Woo! Somebody's got the bug.
Well, so as everyone knows, I'm growing my kale, and we had that hot streak last week, and my kale ain't looking so hot, so I need to protect it a little bit more. And I definitely want to grow throughout the winter. So, and it was
So
only like $180.
so compost in the middle of it.
Compost in the middle of it.
Yeah, dig a little trench down the middle
Uh-huh.
of the greenhouse, and put your coffee grounds, your food waste, some hay, and some stuff in there, and compost heats while it goes through its process, and you
Ah.
get two benefits of it. One is the compost will become the soil supplement for next year's gardens, and in the winter it will create heat to keep things going in the greenhouse.
Okay. So the plan is to obviously eat from it
Hmm.
and maybe have some for the neighbors, but use that food that grows in that house because it's a pretty large size greenhouse, right? For the food that we provide down on ML King and other areas
Yep.
for the unhoused. So that's the plan.
Yeah, and we've got tons of cherry tomatoes popping up now. I think we're on like our fifth or sixth harvest. We've given a bunch away. We've eaten a bunch of them. I'm making a lot of pasta salads with tomatoes in them.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's good. And people are starting to give me zucchini again, and I'm using that for different things. Matter of fact, zucchini makes a really good lasagna.
Yes, it does actually. I haven't had a zucchini lasagna in years, actually.
But yeah, I like using it as the noodles for lasagna, and I make zucchetti by parsing the zucchini into small noodle-sized pieces. You don't cook the noodles in this case because they're just strips of zucchini, but you add sauce to it just before you serve it.
What'd you call me?
I call it here.
Spaghetti?
Zucchetti. So yeah, it's all things that you can do, and we learn as we get more vegetables locally, we learn different things to do with them, and all of us have our thing. For me, it's like I'm not a big fan of eggplant, but I'm trying to think if there's some place I can go and go with that and make something in eggplant that I'll actually enjoy.
I don't know what I had. It was at a restaurant, and I took a chance, and it was delicious, and it was an eggplant dish, but I don't remember what it was. But it was phenomenal.
Yeah, I haven't had that experience yet. It's one of those things. No, I think eggplant has a different name in Europe. They call it aubergine, which I
Mhm,
think is really cool. But
mhm.
it still tastes like eggplant.
Doesn't matter what you call it. I know what it tastes like.
Yeah.
You're not fooling
Oh,
me.
it's yeah. Hey, it's
Escargot is
eggplant.
snails, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, but they taste so good with garlic and butter on them. They taste like garlic butter snot balls.
So, oh god, I've never had it.
I
So
have.
there's just certain things that depending on what it is, what it looks like, or what the potential texture is going to be in my mouth. I'm good. Thank you.
Actually, I will try a lot of things. Um, and escargot is one of the things I've tried. And it wasn't bad, but it's not like something I would ever buy a second time.
Uh,
Yeah.
Duck Faux Gras was pretty good.
Yeah.
Am I saying
Yeah.
that correctly?
Fagua. Yeah.
Duck Faux Gras,
Yeah. It's a pate.
a
So,
pate.
yeah. It's yeah, duck chicken pancake. Chicken livers are good depending on how they're prepared. Um, but it's not good all the time.
It's just really, I don't know.
Rob is agreeing with me. Escargot is good. Eggplant, not so much.
What's the fish eggs? Caviar?
Fish,
Like
yeah,
that?
fish. They're sturgeon eggs. Yeah,
No, just it's weird. Like no.
they pop in your mouth. That's a little off putting for me. It's a textural thing. But I've known people who won't eat mushrooms because it's a textural thing. I said, God, mushrooms are awesome.
I love mushrooms. Like my brother used to work at IHOP, and they would say MOP, right? Mushrooms, onions, and peppers. So I would get my omelet that way.
Yeah.
So I love mushrooms that way, but I don't love mushrooms in every form. So I'm particular on the mushrooms.
Well, if you saute them in butter and garlic, I'm good with them no matter how you put them in front of me.
Well, I mean, you're kind of changing it. It's like deep frying green beans, right? It's like
Yeah.
Fridays has those, and we're definitely not endorsing any restaurant here,
No, not
uh,
at all.
especially when they destroy the veggie and deep fry it. Like,
Yeah.
why?
Well,
Why did you do that?
I had a really good friend who explained to me that there's the triangle. And says there's two of the things in the triangle you'll eat, and the third one you won't. And he says like broccoli, asparagus, and green beans. And he says I don't do broccoli. And I said no, I'll eat all three of those. I'm fine with that.
I'll eat all three, but asparagus is my least favorite because it has to be cooked just right for me
Yeah,
to really enjoy the taste.
I agree, and that's why I don't eat asparagus out. I only eat it when I cook it because
Mm-mm.
I saute it in butter and I throw in some almonds and stuff. It's just you have to have it right. The one thing I won't eat, I mean, I'll even eat eggplant sometimes. But the one thing I just cannot eat, I can't get past my lips, and is lima beans. Never been able to do it.
Oh, I love lima beans.
Oh, you can have all mine.
Lima beans are great. I loved lima beans as a kid. There's just something
Yeah,
about the taste of a lima bean that's just really good.
it's good that somebody likes them because that means somebody's going to eat them because I can't.
It was navy beans for me. My dad, we grew up poor, and there were a lot of us, and he would make just big vats of navy bean soup, and it was just the grossest thing. As an
Yeah,
adult, I like it, but oh god,
yeah, and Rob is saying that Stephanie makes roasted asparagus. I haven't had that. That'll be an interesting thing to
yeah,
try.
that's pretty good. Well, we are way off the rails on
But
perspective. You want to try to get
but
back on the
yeah,
train tracks here?
let's get back. We started talking about food, and there we
Oh, we,
go.
we took a side road,
And
the
kind of went
scenic
down.
route.
But food is all about perspective too.
Hmm.
Escargot is considered. a high end restaurant thing. But escargot started in the farm. It started with poor people eating snails because they were readily available.
Is it certain snails, or can I just go out in my garden and?
Average garden snails, as far as I know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Continue.
yeah. So it's a matter of perspective is what you think it is. There's this wonderful movie called Mr. North with Anthony Edwards and Harry Dean Stanton, Laura McCall, and there's a moment. It's about 1920s Newport, Rhode Island, and Newport, Rhode Island is a really she place in the 1920s pre-depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so the perspective from his perspective, this character is a English butler in the high end homes, and he's well sought after. He's very well paid for that. And there's this kid who teaches who just came into Newport, Rhode Island, who's very well educated, and tutors children for their tests, and they become friends. And he pulls him aside and tells him that I just had the best fish chowder I've ever had. It cost me a dime. You go up to the avenues, and it's called bouillabaisse, and it'll cost you $5.
Mm,
It's a matter of perspective. Bouillabaisse is fish chowder.
that's
That's
what it
what it
is?
is. That's what it is. It's fish. It's a fish chowder,
Huh.
and because it's got the French name, the bouillabaisse, French name and everything. God, I did a horrible job of that. It looks high end, but you know what bouillabaisse came from? It came from Marseille in France. It was the fishermen's. It's what the fishermen ate. But somewhere along the line, somebody started selling it up and giving it airs, and suddenly you're paying a small fortune for something that the fishermen buy for a fraction of the cost, and is
Mm,
probably as good, if not better, than what you're paying a high end amount for. It's perspective.
yeah, I'm
We
with you.
we separate out ourselves into these classes and into these silos because we perceive ourselves in them. And in order to get out of them and to change our environment to improve our station, we have to change our perspective. And we can change it by limiting it, or we can change it by embracing information and finding out that maybe we're wrong, and that's okay.
I type a
So,
question in the chat here. Have
okay.
you changed? So, what have you recently changed your perspective on?
How much time do we have? I mean, my perspective changes almost minute to minute as I learn new information, and I'm constantly seeking new information.
Well, maybe I should change that. Something that you were staunchly, or just you had the opposite viewpoint on, right? That's something that's easy for you to kind of change your perspective because of lack of knowledge or something like that. But something you were like, no, I don't agree with that. And it's like, you know what? You won me
Well,
over.
you know, we're seeing a shift in perspective now, and I can't really talk about it on the show because we don't talk politics here, and I don't generally talk politics in general anyhow. But I'm watching an interesting phenomenon happen as people are shifting their perspective on a person who everyone was behind for a long time. And again, I don't talk politics, and I'm not going to share my thoughts one way or the other. But
Hmm.
there is a movement of perspective shifting within one of the parties that is pretty astounding, and it's interesting to track how that's going on and where it's moving to. I'm fascinated to see where it goes to in the next election because it's shifting pretty quickly right now.
All right, I'll tell you one that's really personal.
Okay.
And so I do not care for drug dealers. I really have an issue with drug dealers that prey on the most vulnerable in our community. And the rock the block folks operate from a space of love, right? And some of them have previously uh, participated in those behaviors. And so while they are wildly different people now, at the time, right? That would have been my perspective, right? And that is kind of my perspective. But what they've been sharing with me is, everybody is in pain, and everyone needs love and opportunity and chances and whatnot. And so I'm having a difficult time trying to reconcile, um, trying to love through someone's behavior and have conversation and patience versus the potential harm that they're currently doing. And I'm open to looking at it in a different way, right? And part of what I feel like I need to do in this space is I don't have a background in addiction. I'm not trained in addiction. I haven't gone through addiction. I work with folks that work with people that are suffering from addiction. I work with people directly that are suffering through addiction, but I'm not trained in that. And so that's very difficult for me to reconcile, right? But what I'm really interested in is what is gonna work? What is the most high impact practices that we can deploy to help everyone get out of this situation, right? Because the macro thing would be, how are drugs that are coming from outside of our country getting in to our little town of Bremerton? Uh, because that's really, to me, the main thing, right? These things are coming in, and there's this big infrastructure that we can't dismantle, but we can handle and hit the problem head on. So this is one
So,
thing that I'm struggling with right now.
so I have a very similar story, and then we'll get into talking about that specifically.
Mhm.
Um, Several years ago, I got rear-ended in a very bad way, and it took me 3 or 4 years to get right. During that process, I did a lot of physical therapy, um, and I was talking to the massage therapist that was working on my neck, and we were talking about, and I said, I just don't get the whole drug thing. I just don't. And he said, well, let me put it to you this way, and this shifted my perspective almost immediately. Over the years, it has informed a lot of the work that I do. So we do not um, we do not live in a world that supports our humanity. You've heard me say the same thing. So drugs, cell phones, all of the escapism are coping tools for that. So I suddenly understood the advent and the continuation of drug use. Now, something I heard a long time ago. Um, hmm, One second.
I'm sorry. I you were telling the beginning of that story.
Yeah, I'll tell you that story in a moment. That was a different perspective too. But the people, we don't live in a world that supports our humanity, so people find ways to escape. I was told a long time ago that the first time somebody uses heroin, it changes them forever,
Mm.
permanently. It changes their ability to experience joy forever. The first time. I don't know if that's true or not. I remember I was told that, and I just sat back and thought about that. That something that I could do to myself could completely and totally alter my ability to feel something, anything, or to understand it. That just is horrific to me. But going to the drug dealer, um, let's think about that for a minute. Nobody chooses to be a drug dealer as a profession. We don't go to college to become drug dealers. We don't start our lives in school thinking, "Well, I'm going to be a drug dealer. What do I need to learn to be a drug dealer?" You become a drug dealer because you don't think you have any other options.
Well,
And
and these scenarios, many times it is a way for them to keep, because they're in addiction also, right?
Right. To keep
So
using.
that's how they can afford to keep their high going.
Right.
So it's difficult for me, right? This is something that I'm grappling with, and I may not ever go to the other side and say, "Hey, you know what? We just need to love on everyone and yada yada yada." My thing is, separate those folks, get them out of that area, so that people that are there have a chance to come out of it. And because when they're lucid or when they're exhausted and they're ready to change their life, it's like, come on, save me now. But if you let the day pass, the next day, right,
Right back on it.
things change,
So,
right?
so when you think about it in the long term, the work that we're doing is a way to resolve most all of that because we want to make things better for everybody so that people don't feel they have no choice but to sell drugs. So people feel that they have a better future ahead of them so they don't feel like taking drugs, so that we have a more human environment. Because in the long run, loving on everybody, having a more human environment, however you want to say it, is the way we're going to resolve these issues. It is the best way to resolve these issues to become more human centric. It's a long way away. I mean, this is not going to be tomorrow. This is not going to be fixed. But as long as we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome, it'll never change. As
Well,
long as people say that they aren't going to come to the table because what does it matter to them, it's not going to change.
right. Well, and that's why I can respect the try, even though I didn't agree with it. There are schools of thought that say we need to just decriminalize, all drugs, right? And I don't necessarily agree with that. Now we don't have to go into the political piece of that. I just don't think that that is going to work. And we're trying that experiment in different pockets of our nation. Other countries have done that. And then with the Blake ruling, and now all of a sudden, if the cops can see it, then it's going to be an issue. To me, it was like, hey, we have socialized a group of people to say, hey, go ahead, do what you do, and then you said, "No, it's not cool anymore." But they're either addicted, newly addicted, or deeply addicted. And now, how do you stop it now that you've changed the law? You know?
Yeah, and the fact is, people who are lawmakers don't understand the total consequence or the environment in which it happens. And their people who are advising them don't either. And somewhere along the line, I hate to say it, being very skeptical these days, there's usually a monetary benefit to the lawmakers to do it one way over another.
Hmm.
And as long as that monetary benefit is inherent, we're going to continue to do these things.
Well, as an aspiring lawmaker, I'm trying to delve in and be open minded in it. And to your point, you talk about it all the time, right? What's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over again is not working. Whether I agreed with that particular perspective or plan or not, I can respect the fact that it was like, okay, let's try this and see if it works. And you don't give up on it right off the bat. You try to modify it based on, because you do something, right? It's like you're testing, right? This is experimentation. You're trying something based on research and education. You try it for a little while. Okay, this is working a little bit. This isn't. All right, let's tweak it a little bit more. Let's tweak it a little bit more. But we can't be so dug in that we can't say, hey, this is a failed experiment. We need to turn the other way. Whatever that is.
So,
This is the example I'm using now, but it's with all things.
and I agree. In all things that we're going to do is trial and error, but we have to have a larger group of people putting input in before we make those decisions. Right now, we have far too small a pool advising those types of things, and they don't have enough information. But I have a question for you. You have
Sure.
an issue with drug dealers. What do you think about doctors?
Uh, with like prescribing drugs.
Yeah, the
So,
over prescribing opioids, and now there's like two movies out about how that happened.
so I believe that it should be illegal for pharmaceutical companies to go and lobby and wine and dine these physicians and get them to peddle their drugs and market their drugs, so that and they're getting kickbacks, right?
Mhm.
In order to make this mainstream, right? And they're and
Right.
they're they're profiteering off of it. Yeah, I think that is tremendously dangerous. And yeah, in that regard, I think they should be treated well, and no one is really treated harshly now. But in on that side, you've got money, right? So it's like, hey, there's a class action lawsuit. So I've got, and let's make it in dollars we can understand. I've got $100. I'm going to fine you $1, right? Well, if I'm going to make $99, am I going to keep doing it? Yeah, because I'll pay you the dollar, right? That's just the
Right.
tax for doing business. So until you say, you know what, we're going to tax you $99, or we're going to throw you in jail, or we're going to remove your ability to do this ever again in life, then you're going to continue to see that. So,
And we're not seeing any legislation that way because the pharmaceutical companies have got one of the largest lobbies in the world. A lot of money there.
oh, to that end, I think I was watching Valuetainment. Not a big fan of him personally, uh, big financier type individual. He was talking about the death of cable TV, right? And network television. And the fact that it stays alive is 75% of their revenue comes from pharmaceutical marketing.
Oh
And
my
if
God,
that
the
was
stupid ass commercials.
right, but if that was made illegal tomorrow, that would die all the way.
Yep.
And it was like, you know what, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I remember the I remember a commercial I saw years ago, and I don't tend to watch anything that has commercials anymore. Um, about it was a Viagra commercial, and there were or Cielo, one of those, and there were two people on the top of a hill in a meadow in bathtubs holding each other's hands. And I'm like
I
looking at
remember
this
that
going,
commercial.
I'm thinking, people get paid to think this shit up. I'm just
But
like,
you
wow.
never forget it, right? It worked. You have never forgotten that commercial.
No, because it's one of those symbols of how stupid can something be and be considered viable.
Hmm. Rob says, through the work we do, I have changed my thoughts on mental health, addiction, and the cause of homelessness.
Mhm. Homelessness is not drugs and craziness. There is an element of that there, and a lot of people become that as time goes on, because if we aren't living through life well to start with, and we start taking drugs to escape, and we start using other means to escape, when you're homeless, that's everything on steroids, everything way more extreme. So it's not it takes an extraordinary person to come through that with any kind of balance.
Well, from a historical perspective, you were educating us on Reagan, right? And
Mhm.
you're saying that that closed many of the mental health hospitals. And so we see a lot of mental health that is out on the streets, that maybe there's drug addiction that's there, but the mental health component was there first, right?
That was. And that was how we visibly first saw homeless. It's when it became to the public awareness across the country. It was in the 1980s, and they were the crazy people, the mentally ill people. I'm not going to say crazy. The mentally ill people. And they were the drug users. We saw a lot of that in the 80s, and that pretty much set our understanding of what homelessness is. Now we have the mortgage disaster. We have the continual manipulation of money. We have the continual downgrading of the economy to make it sound like we're doing fine with $15 an hour jobs when we can't. Where it takes four people to afford an apartment. So those are all factors that nobody's talking about, because oh my god, if we start talking about that, well, then we might start attacking the people doing it, which really kind of need to. You talk about pharmaceutical companies not being allowed to do something. Well, let's talk about private equity not being allowed to do something. When money is the only goal and humanity has no part at all, what use is it?
Yeah. Yeah, you're correct. And I think that part gets missed, right? If you were
Intentionally missed. It literally never gets talked about.
well, it doesn't get talked about, and I think let's say you are experiencing the negative impacts of homelessness, and you are a housed individual, and you're seeing drug use or whatever, and you've got family, you've got kids, right? That is negatively impacting you, and so you want that situation resolved. and you're not really interested in how folks got there or how long it would take for them to get out of that situation. You want it resolved, right? Well, then all of a sudden, fast forward 5 or 10 years, something happens to you. You're the breadwinner. You don't have anything in place that can save you. You don't have friends and family. You go, or maybe you exhaust that relationship, right? Because you lose your place, you downsize, you see it. That's why all these storage units are all over the place, right? I
Yeah.
downsize, I put everything in storage. I go and I stay in a smaller place. Then I go out and I stay with a friend or a relative. Then I'm couch surfing. Now I'm living in my car. Now I'm on the street, right? And in all of that happening, the relationship, my credit rating is messed up. My rental history is messed up. I need first, last, and deposit. I need 3 times the rent. And who's going to rent to me because I'm a risk, right? So now, how do I get back out of there? Then you say, well, go in KCR or go to one of these other resources.
Who
It's
have
like,
no
that's all well and
resources.
good, but there's only a finite amount of housing stock that is open and available to take chances on folks in that way, right? And many times there's nothing. So folks are just waiting, right? Think about how long it takes for people to get Section 8. It could take a decade for you to get called in order for you to get a Section 8 voucher,
Well, we
right?
both know somebody who was struggling to get the paperwork done so that they could get an apartment.
And so you still have the issue. I have a fiduciary duty to my family and myself to keep us safe. So I can be empathetic to all that, but I still need that to be dealt with. And so
So,
then it becomes a thing, then you need to change your perspective, right?
thank
On
you.
and then also get involved on, well, what can we do as a community, as a society, as a city, as a county, as a state, as a country to end this,
So
right?
let's go back to 46%, probably closer to 48 now percent of people in this country are one paycheck away from living that scenario.
Mhm.
So we need to look at how we move forward. We have to move forward together and we have to change the systems. We have to. We are at a point where, I mean, let's not even talk 100 years from now. Our children may be not facing a nice future or may not have a future at all. Let's talk about today. Let's talk about the fact that if we do not change this in the next 10 years, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people falling into homelessness. We are already seeing climate migration. We're going to see a lot more of it. It's
Well,
going to get exponentially worse.
it could be falling down the stairs or getting cancer or some other health thing. So it's like it's some people say, well, it's not just the one check. I can get sick. I had long-term COVID, right? And it exhausts your savings. And now you find yourself there, right?
Yep,
There's so many different ways. And we work with families on a daily
all the
basis
time.
that did everything they could. They did everything right, quote unquote. I hate that term. Uh, and they find themselves in this situation, and there's nothing there to pull them out or stabilize them from even falling all the way through. Right? They've expended all that. So there's a lot of things to talk about and adjust and change our perspectives on, and we need to do it simultaneously at every level. Right? We can't
Yep.
just start at the bottom. You got to work at the bottom, work in the middle, work at the top, and do all the things all simultaneously. And there's a space for everyone because your puzzle piece may be writing, right? It may be advocating, could be boots on the
We
ground,
we
right?
have a lady who's joined up on our team who is printing out the books that I wrote, the document I wrote, and handing it to people, and people are coming on board. I've got people now telling me that I had somebody message me on Facebook telling me that the Patreon doesn't work and they're ready to start donating to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to go and figure out what the deal with that was. And it's like, it's difficult. So I think we're at the last word, Marwan. What do you want to say?
Last word.
Well,
This
let's
week.
let's each take a last word.
All right. So my last word would be challenge yourself on a perspective that you're dug in on and analyze why you're so dug in on it and look at the other side. Uh, when I taught negotiations at the college, one of the things, the concepts is looking at who it is you're negotiating with and looking at it from their perspective, right? What are their interests? What are their pros and cons? What is it that they want? What are their deal breakers, right? Because that's going to be a better negotiation. And the best negotiations are win-win, not win-loss, right? So that's what I would say is really look at the other side there. And don't be afraid to agree with someone else's points that you're typically in opposition with, thinking that they're going to use it as a gotcha. Live in your own truth and um be confident in that, right? If they try to weaponize that or use it, don't worry about it, right? Don't worry about it.
So, to add to that, I would say that I challenge you to look at the beliefs that you hold as firm and see if there's not information. Just choose one and see if there's not information that contradicts what you believe,
Mm.
and be open to being wrong. Because when you are open to being wrong, you learn new things. You learn new things, you grow, and you have more tools.
And it doesn't mean that it's just going to be some kind of free for all because you're like, okay, you know what? Maybe we could try it this way, or it could be a little bit of this. We're always so fearful of if we acquiesce and give in even a little bit, the pendulum is going to swing too far in that direction, right? When it just needs to move a little bit. Uh, don't be fearful of that.
It's not an all or nothing.
Doesn't have to be.
Nope.
And we just got to keep finding those people that share that same view and bring them together because the answer is in the middle.
Yep, it is. So be open, love when you can, practice compassion.
Absolutely. Terry says, thank you for sharing, Rob. Terry gets the last word today.
Hmm.
All right. I hope that you have enjoyed today's episode on Perspective. This is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces, episode number 78. As always, you can catch the podcast on YouTube, both on the Conduit and the Conduit Podcast Show. And on the Conduit, it is set up as its own podcast, so you can just go straight to the playlist and listen to it to your heart's delight. Keep in mind, change is going to happen only if you get involved in it. For Mark Boatwright Frost, I am Marwan Cameron. This is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. We'll be back tonight at 5:30 for City Council.